Evening to everyone. Today the topic is metastatic gallbladder carcinoma case presentation and discussion. Myself, Dr. Kishan Soni, MCH first year, Department of Oncosurgery, and this presentation is made under the guidance of Professor Dr. Manoj Pandey sir, Department of Surgical Oncology, IMSBH. A 60-year-old female presented to a surgical oncology OPD in July 2019 with a chief complaint of abdominal pain and loss of appetite for a duration of 1 month. She did not have any comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, tuberculosis, or asthma, and also there is no history of surgery in past. On physical examination, have mild right hypochondriac tenderness, routine blood counts, serum chemistry panel were within normal limits. CCT reports shows a gallbladder distension, calculus in gallbladder with calcification of GB wall. Also, irregularly inhomogeneously enhancing GB wall thickness with multiple hypodense lesion in both of the liver, multiple enlarged mesenteric and peripancreatic liver. Image-guided biopsy revealed adenocarcinoma of gallbladder and CA19-9 is higher range, that is 13.39.2. Advice for NGS, which is positive for TP53 mutation, exon 7, exon 5, and also EGFR mutation, that is exon 20, P790N. This is the pre-chemotherapy CT of the with multiple hypotenuse lesion of the bulk of the liver with thickening of the gallbladder wall with and gallbladder distension. Then the patient was treated with fixed rate injection gemcitabine 1 gram per meter square administered on the day 1 and day 8, and injection oxaliplatin 100 milligram per meter square on day 1 in every 21 days. After second cycle of chemotherapy, a daily dose of tablet erlotinib 150 milligram was added as NGS report was positive for EGFR T790M mutation. After 6 cycle of chemotherapy, again CT scan repeated. We saw the liver is smooth, no evidence of liver disease, which was normal in size, shape, outline, satiety, nation. GBs or multiple calculi in lumen and eccentric wall thickening in fundo body region infiltrating segment 4B and 5 of liver. And so it's a near complete response. After that injection, gemcitabine and oxaliplatin was then discontinued, and tablet capecitabine 1500 milligram and divided dose for 14 days, and tablet erlotinib 150 milligram once daily was continued as a maintenance therapy. This is the post chemotherapy CSCT after 6 cycles. Now discussion part. First, the gallbladder cancer is the most common and aggressive type of biliary tree cancer, having a shortest median survival. In stage 1 and 3, it is 12.9 months, and in stage 4, it is around 4 to 6 months and average 5.8 months. Affects women more frequently than men, and a particular high incidence is Chile, Japan, and northern India. The most common histologic variety is adenocarcinoma, characterized by a local invasion, extensive regional lymph node metastasis, vascular encasement, and distant metastasis. Complete surgical resection is most preferred treatment of choice in gallbladder cancer cases. But advanced biliary cancer that are unresectable has poor prognosis. This situation, gemcitabine and cisplatin combination therapy is used. Oxaliplatin is used in clinical practice instead of cisplatin, and oxaliplatin is a third generation platinum drug with activity and toxicity profile that differ from those of other platinum derivatives, including cisplatin and carboplatin. Complete remissions are hardly encountered in metastatic case with chemotherapy. Therefore, it is considered crucial to combine standard therapy with molecular targeting. How will the gallbladder carcinoma present? There are 3 ways by identifying, that is malignancy suspected preoperatively, malignancy discovered accidentally during cholecystitis is raised, and bilirubin is raised when the disease is advanced and involving the bile duct and multiple liver metastasis. Tumor marker, 2 most commonly tumor marker are used, that is CA19-9 and CEA. If the CEA of 79% and specificity of 79%. Also, CEA more than 4 nanogram per ml is 93% specific for GBC, but sensitivity is only 50% of detecting cancer. Very small, some small studies also show there is a CA125 tumor marker in gallbladder cancers. Then ultrasound is first investigation in gallbladder pathology, but in metastatic setting, endoscopic ultrasound may helpful because it has a higher sensitivity and specificity for GBC, higher sensitivity and specificity than ultrasound. It enables FNSE of any suspicious small or aspiration of bile for cytology, useful for staging by assessing tumor wall invasion or distant nodal spread. Distinguish between inflammatory nodes and metastatic disease during an evaluation of periportal and peripancreatic adenopathy. The most common diagnostic method used for the staging of the metastatic gallbladder cancer is CT scanning. It can identify the gallbladder polyps, wall thickening, mass lesion, hepatic involvement, node involvement, other distant spread, and however, only 1/3 of the pathological positive nodes are identified preoperatively by CT scan. Also, CCT chest to be done to rule out the lung metastasis. MRI, MRCP mainly used when there is an obstructive jaundice to see whether this obstructive jaundice is due to the obstruction of the CVD or due to at the level of CVD to identify the level of obstruction. PET scan. It is a definitive role in the diagnosing of the metastasis. Useful in diagnosis the ambiguous primary lesion, residual after cholecystectomy, and distant metastasis. PET scanning may identify disease and resulted in a change in the stage and treatment in 70% to 23%. Biopsy in metastatic. Normally, in the operable patient, the biopsy is not indicated. The need for tissue biopsy before definitive exploration and resection of the mass that is suspicious for GBC is controversial because of the risk of tumor seeding in the peritoneal cavity and abdominal wall. But it is indicated for unresectable mass and mainly two things done: core-radial biopsy and percutaneous FNSC or endoscopic ultrasound guided FNSC. Endoscopic ultrasound directed FNSC of gallbladder lesion is associated with 80% sensitivity and 100% specificity, and percutaneous FNSC has 88% accuracy of GBC with negligible false positive rate. Staging laparoscopy. It is done if the CT scan cannot identify sometimes very small peritoneal metastasis, which is identified by staging laparoscopy. And next generation sequencing. It is a test which identifies the molecular target in metastatic setting. In next generation sequencing, we assess the DNA genome of the patient and identify various mutations occur in the patient, which may lead to the development of the malignancy. So that this, after identification of this molecular targets, we start some targeted therapeutic, targeted medications. This molecular target in oncology. The era of personalized medicine in oncology begins more than 2 decades ago, when the first molecules characterizing tumor aggressiveness were identified and used for diagnostic and therapeutic application. Targeted therapeutics can be developed for use in combination with currently existing therapeutic approach in order to improve their efficacy, to overcome the treatment resistance of tumor cell and thus protect the patient from recurrence, to repress molecular mechanism related to immune escape of cancer cell, and to combat the metastatic dissemination of cancer cells. ERB family members, that is EGFR and HER2/neu, are the most studied and prominent molecule contributing to the cancer cell aggressiveness and disease progression. Target agent can be used to reach different endpoint in cancer prevention and treatment. They can be administered to prevent cancer formation, to treat primary tumor, and to protect patient from or to combat the metastatic spread of malignant tumor. NCCN guidelines of the gallbladder. In this NCCN guideline, that is stage 4B, that means any T, N2, M0 or any T, any N, M1 is metastatic disease. Then treatment of the metastatic CAGB, mainly by chemotherapy, targeted therapy. The chemotherapy, it has shown significant but modest survival benefit in metastatic CAGB. Sharma, Dowry, Mohanty et al. A randomized trial compared systemic chemotherapy of gemcitabine plus oxaliplatin or 5-fluorouracil plus leucovorin versus best supportive care alone in 81 patients with unresectable or metastatic gallbladder carcinoma. The median overall survival is 4.5 months in best supportive care, 4.6 months in 5-fluorouracil plus leucovorin, and 9.5 months in gemcitabine and oxaliplatin. That means the gemcitabine and oxaliplatin have higher median overall survival. Most published trials are small and have included patients with all biliary tract cancer. Only few clinical trials were performed exclusively in patients with gallbladder cancer. Result of 3 phase 2 trials which exclusively evaluated efficacy of chemotherapy in patient with advanced gallbladder cancer. In first study, only gemcitabine monotherapy is given. Total number of the patient is 26 and response rate is 36% with median overall survival 30 weeks. In second study, gemcitabine plus cisplatin is used. Number of patients is 30, response rate is 37% and median overall survival is 20 weeks. Then gemcitabine plus cisplatin, again there is another study of gemcitabine cisplatin which included 42% of 42 patients with response rate of 48% and the median overall survival of 7 months. The chemotherapeutic agent which is used in the metastatic carcinoma gallbladder is fluoropyrimidine based regimen, that is 5-fluorouracil or 5-fluorouracil based regimens were among the first reported in gallbladder cancer. In all trials, the 5-fluorouracil alone or combination therapy demonstrated the response rate from 0 to 34% and median survival of 4 to 6 months in patients with advanced gallbladder and biliary tract cancer. In contrast, most recent study using infusional 5-fluorouracil combination therapy reported higher response rate and better overall survival. That is, Ducrex, Roger, and Fendi et al. Studies showed infusional 5-fluorouracil in combination with cisplatin resulted in partial response in 6 patients, that is 24%, and median overall survival for patients with gallbladder cancer was 11.5 months, that is increased, which is compared to the old trials. Capecitabine is an orally active fluoropyrimidine derivative that has demonstrated efficacy in gallbladder cancer, both as a single agent and in combination with cisplatin, gemcitabine, and oxaliplatin. The study of Pat, Hassan, Aguyo et al. Studied 63 patients with hepatobiliary malignancy. Out of this 63 patients, 8 patients with gallbladder cancer. This capecitabine produced objective response in 4% and complete responses 2 patients. Another study of Nehals, Hotel, Hartman et al. Involving 65 patients using capecitabine was used in combination with oxaliplatin. Out of patients, 25 patients have metastatic gallbladder cancer, and the patient with gallbladder cancer had a total disease control rate of 63%, on which 1 complete response, 7 partial response, and 9% is stable disease, and the median survival is 8.2 months. Second, chemotherapeutic agents are gemcitabine based regimens. These are the various, this table shows the various study of gemcitabine with combination. The first 4 studies, that is combination of gemcitabine plus cisplatin, have the response rate ranges from 21 to 35% and the median overall survival ranges from 8.4 months to 11 months. The second combination of gemcitabine is with oxaliplatin. 3 studies which show the response rate of ranges from the 26% to 50% and the median overall survival is 11 months to 15.4 months. Another combination of gemcitabine based regimen is gemcitabine and capecitabine. There are 4 studies which shows the response rate ranges from 17 to 32% and the median overall survival rate of this combination is 12.7 to 14%. That means the gemcitabine and oxaliplatin and gemcitabine and capecitabine has higher response rate and higher median overall survival. Other chemotherapeutic agents are Taxane and other chemotherapeutic agents which are the limited benefit in gallbladder and biliary tract cancer, just like paclitaxel was given in every 21 days, demonstrated very minimal efficacy. Docetaxel, the response rate is only 20% with advanced gallbladder cancer and biliary tract cancer. Similarly, single agent irinotecan is used, which has partial response rate of 8% and clinical benefit rate in 48%. I study evaluate with metastatic gallbladder cancer and good performance status. The combination of cisplatin and gemcitabine is standard first-line systemic therapy, and in patients with borderline performance status, single-agent gemcitabine or capecitabine is a reasonably alternative option. Now, target therapies in gallbladder cancer. There are various mutations are identified in gallbladder cancer, out of which the most common are KRAS, that is 10 to 67%, EGFR 63%, BRF 0 to 33%, and ERB2 HER2 is 16 to 64%. The most common studied molecular marker is EGFR. Blockage of EGFR receptor is done by two methods: by giving oral tyrosine kinase inhibitor, that is erlotinib, or anti-EGFR monotherapy. That is study is phase 3 Korean trial evaluated the efficacy of first-line treatment with gemcitabine and oxaliplatin with or without erlotinib in patients with advanced biliary tract cancer that include 31% of the patients with gallbladder cancer. The median progression-free survival 5.8 months in chemotherapy plus erlotinib group compared with 4.2 months in the chemotherapy alone group. And the median overall survival was 9.5 for both groups. However, in gallbladder cancer, no benefit of erlotinib was noted. Another study, randomized phase 2 study comparing gemcitabine plus some chemotherapy with the same chemotherapy regimen in combination with cetuximab, demonstrated a higher 4-month progression-free survival rate with addition of cetuximab respectively. Another target is vascular endothelial growth factor is overexpressed in biliary tract cancer and has been proposed as a therapeutic target. This used the bevacizumab, a monoclonal antibody targeting VEGF in combination with erlotinib, that is dual target therapy. Used in when used, the 9 patient has partial response that was sustained beyond 4 weeks in 6 patients, and the median response duration was 8.4 months. And the overall stable disease was observed in about half of the tested patients when the dual targeted therapy is used. Also, sunitinib and sorafenib is used as a targeted therapy but has modest benefit in biliary tract and gallbladder cancer. Similarly, selumetinib, a BRAF inhibitor, trypin, a ribonucleotide reductase inhibitor, imatinib, a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, have shown some efficacy in gallbladder and biliary tract cancer, and lapatinib, targeting ERB2, HER2, and bortezomib proteasome inhibitor, failed to demonstrate benefit in gallbladder and biliary tract cancer. These are the various targeting agents, single agent or with combination, and their response rate when using in this table. The maximum response rate is seen when the gemcitabine, oxaliplatin, and bevacizumab combination. The second best response is seen in gemcitabine, oxaliplatin, and erlotinib. These are the various clinical trials which is progress for target therapeutic option for gallbladder cancer, but result has not come yet. Then some EGFR mutations seen in pancreatic cancer also. When it is seen, it may lead to poor prognosis and disease progression, and blocking this by using the erlotinib or gefitinib, the chemotherapy result will improve, that is improve the anti-cancer effect of gemcitabine. Similarly, in most common, the EGFR mutation is most commonly identified in non-small cell lung carcinoma. So the tailored use of EGFR tyrosine kinase inhibitor therapy has been pioneered in the area of lung cancer. The first generation EGF inhibitor, that is erlotinib and gefitinib, selectively target the exon 90 deletion and L858R mutant EGFR over wild type. Second mutational event in EGFR is exon 20 T790M substitution, which is seen in our gallbladder cancers, which is seen in our case. But it is the second most common mutation seen in EGFR, and it is the most common resistant mutation to first generation EGFR TKIs. Our case report demonstrating the effect of erlotinib with gemcitabine oxaliplatin regimen in this EGFR mutated exon 20 T790M gallbladder cancer patient with liver metastasis, which showed a near complete response. That we cannot rule out that the observed response was due solely to treatment with gemcitabine. However, there is hardly any literature regarding the effect of EGFR inhibitor in EGFR mutated GBC patient, and further detailed studies are required to confirm the efficacy of erlotinib in such particular EGFR mutation cases. On concluding my case report, the patient with a gallbladder cancer presented in this study had a rarely encountered near complete response in the presence of tumor associated EGFR mutation. This would suggest the future study of EGFR TKI therapy plus chemotherapy in patients with biliary cancer is needed in those with EGFR mutation. Our finding highlight the clinical response of EGFR exon 20 T790 mutation to erlotinib. This observation should inform the design of clinical trial using EGFR TKIs to treat gallbladder and other biliary cancers. Further understanding of molecular mechanism of carcinogenesis coupled with more extensive genetic profiling of GBC patient will help to assess the therapeutic relevance of targeting a specific pathway. These are the references from which all the information is taken. Thank you.
Sir, how do we know in this patient the response is from not from the GEMOX and the responses from erlotinib, especially when it is a 790M mutation? So it could be because of the GEMOX only. How would we able to prove the same?
Saurabh, first thing is that you have to understand the first T79 mutation with second T79M mutation. There are two different things.
Okay.
When you are talking of resistance to first generation TKI, you are talking of a second mutation which occurs while on patient is on treatment with TKI.
Right, sir.
It is always called second T790M mutation. It is not a first mutation. Here it is a first mutation, or it is the only mutation. And this mutation has occurred in a patient who is TKI naive.
Right, sir.
So this is not a mutation which is going to confer resistance to TKI in this patient here. Plus, T79M confer resistance only in 50% of the cases. Right, and patients who are treated with osimertinib in presence of T79M mutation, when they develop resistance to osimertinib, what is the treatment? Rechallenge with erlotinib.
Erlotinib, right.
So ultimately you have to come back to erlotinib.
Right, sir.
So it is actually wrong to say that if there is a second T79M mutation, second T90M mutation is different from exon 20 deletion T79M.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Because this is occurring in a DNAV patient. Now, very good question is that how can you say that the response is because of combination of gemcitabine, oxaliplatin plus erlotinib and not because of GEMOX alone? Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Do we really know that the addition of erlotinib helped or the addition of erlotinib has not helped?
Yes, sir.
Now, basically, this is based on the mechanism. One, we say that there is a exon 20 deletion, so erlotinib could have helped. Second, it has been shown that the TKIs, when given with the gemcitabine, actually improve the efficacy of gemcitabine. This is very well demonstrated in literature now.
Yes, sir.
So even if the erlotinib might not be working, it might be increasing the efficacy of gemcitabine over there and producing the response. So both the mechanism could be there. Because with the GEMOX alone, you never see this kind of response.
Right, sir. Totally agreed, sir. Complete response.
You never see this kind of response.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So either the efficacy of gemcitabine has been increased, or erlotinib has added to the response.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
But we can't be sure.
Second, sir, I asked about is there ongoing trial on the same which is going on where we are utilizing NGS panel in these metastatic CA gallbladder cases, and is there any criteria that you are using for what patients are you including in the trial, like any peritoneal mets, liver mets, or extrahepatic liver mets are also included in the trial? Is there any criteria that you're using?
Sort of, we are actually doing NGS in almost all patients of carcinoma of the gallbladder, even if they are operable.
Okay, sir.
Because at some point of time, they are going to go and develop metastatic disease. If not now, maybe 3 years or 5 years later. So we are doing the NGS in almost all the cases. We are not doing a full NGS. What we are doing is we have identified 50 selected genes against which we have some kind of therapies available, or the genes which help us in selecting the therapies or not selecting a therapy. So we are doing a 50 gene NGS panel in this. And it is being done in all the cases. And if a gene mutation is found, especially in metastatic setting, then we do add the targeted therapy to it.
Targeted. Okay. Sir, is it getting like, is the patient paying, or is it some part of the trial where it is on a subsidized basis that you're getting? Because NGS itself has a cost problem that is
NGS
faced.
is, yes, NGS is subsidized. When you talk to somebody and you are getting it routinely done, it can be very easily
Yes,
subsidized. It's
right, sir.
actually it is cheaper than getting a PET scan.
Role of staging laparoscopy before going for any neoadjuvant therapies, sir.
Staging laparoscopy before going for new adjuvant therapy.
Yes.
Is, you mean to say in an operable gallbladder cancer?
No, in advanced or, for example, any patient with locally advanced or any even operable also, if you are planning for any neoadjuvant therapy. So, is there any role of staging laparoscopy in this kind of patients?
No, staging laparoscopy is used just like it is used in the gastric cancers for patients who are operable. Because basically the concept of staging laparoscopy has originated from gastric cancers only, where even in T1 and T2 disease, there could be a peritoneal dissemination in 10 to 15%.
Yes, sir.
Gallbladder cancer is second such situation where you have the commonest thing that we see is a liver metastasis. Almost 50% of them will be having liver metastasis at presentation. And around 40% of them will have jaundice because of infiltration of the common bile duct or nodes at the porta hepatis. These are the
Yes, sir.
mostly advanced cases. In cases which are operable, where you think that surgery is to be done, the 10 to 15% of these cases would be having peritoneal seeding. And
Yes.
you may just open and close. We used to call it KDBK at once upon a time when laparoscopy was not available. KDBK was kholo dekho band karo.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So that is what used to happen. But with laparoscopy, you can put a laparoscope. If you find there is no peritoneal disease, you can go in and do a radical chole. Otherwise, if you find peritoneal disease after putting the incision for a radical chole, then you have nothing but to close it. Take a biopsy and close.
Yes.
So it makes sense to do in operable cases. But if you are taking up for neoadjuvant therapy, I don't think it makes sense. Because in gallbladder, borderline operable cases only will get neoadjuvant therapy. And I don't think with neoadjuvant, there is much benefit in gallbladder. In gallbladder, it
Yes,
is
sir.
either, it's most of the time, it is either adjuvant or palliative.
Sir, are you using neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and like how much is the response that you have seen in your practice with the neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and what selected groups? So we have a TMH criteria, but most of the institutions are not following the TMH criteria. In BHU, what criteria are you using for neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and how much percentage, like supposing 100 patients of locally advanced gallbladder cases, how many cases will you be able to operate after neoadjuvant therapy in your clinical practice, sir?
We are not using, we are not labeling it as neoadjuvant therapy. When we have a locally advanced inoperable disease to begin
Yes,
with,
sir.
our intention of treatment is palliative. And
Okay, sir.
about 15% of those patients will ultimately become operable. Non-metastatic I'm talking about.
Okay, sir.
So about 15% of them will become operable. And if you
Okay,
want, I can ask some of my residents to present those cases where we started with very bulky nodes.
yes, sir.
And either or the tumor very close to porta hepatis, inoperable portal vein invasions, and then
Yes, sir.
these subsequently becoming operable. So we do
Okay.
about 10 to 15% where we have been able to operate. But the problem with this particular group is that the disease recurrence is much faster.
Right, sir. Right.
So despite doing a good job or a R0 resection, you will be able to achieve an R0 resection. Then the second question becomes this: there is no adjuvant policy. So most of the time you will try to continue with the same chemotherapy, which is Gemox in most
Yes,
of
sir.
the time. And
Yes, sir.
by the time you reach the 8th or the 9th cycle of Gemox, majority of them will start having tingling and numbness, and then you have to stop
Neuropathy.
oxaliplatin.
Yes.
So it is not possible to continue this therapy for a longer period. We have not been able to go beyond the 10 cycles or 11 cycles of GEMOX.
Okay, sir.
Then role of radiotherapy after surgical resection, my radiotherapists are not very willing to radiate these patients where we have done extensive resections.
Right, sir.
So I don't know how is TMH policy. Are you radiating all the locally advanced resected cases?
No, sir. So generally, one policy TMH is using is neoadjuvant chemo radiation in the trial setting of Polka GB trial that they
Yeah.
are using in
Yeah.
TMH.
Yeah.
But routinely, no, sir.
Yes. So when we started, I started working on carcinoma gallbladder at 1992. My first paper was published in 94. And I have over 100 publications on gallbladder since then. But unfortunately, that was a time in 90s when there were not many chemotherapeutic agents available. 5-FU leucovorin was the only thing that we have in our hand.
Right.
And that was the time when radiation was being used quite a lot. But over a period of time, the use of radiation has drastically gone down. And because this disease is a primarily Indian problem or low socioeconomic countries problem, there is not much of work being done.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I feel that if I have IORT may be very good, very beneficial if I have a locally advanced disease to begin with, very good response to chemotherapy. It becomes resectable and radical cholecystectomy is done.
Yes, sir.
After that, if you can add intraoperative radiotherapy at that particular point, you might actually retard the local recurrence rates.
Yes, sir.
Because
Okay.
local recurrence and liver metastasis are two common problems that you see in gallbladder. Irrespective of what you do, they come.
Agreed, sir.
Should we do peritoneal washings regularly in operable CA gallbladders to see in case the cytology comes as positive, although it being operable, the intent of management changes?
We don't do it. To be honest, we don't do it. The only place we do peritoneal cytology is ovary. Other than that, we normally don't do peritoneal cytologies in routine.
Like for carcinoma of the stomach, if we are doing a staging laparoscopy and we find like for T3 stage tumors, if they are cytopositive, then the intent of management changes. Similarly, does it apply in gallbladder cancer?
See, the problem with gallbladder is that even if you find, until unless you find these lesions in stage 1, 1A or 1B, or maximum 2, if you go beyond 2, your survival anyway, 5-year survival is about 30%. So majority of them will fail. That's the problem. So the only way right now is to identify them in stage 1. And unfortunately, the cases which are identified in stage 1 are those which are incidentally detected.
Incidental gallbladders.
Incidental gallbladder. And by that time, somebody would have definitely done a
laparoscopic cholecystectomy.
And then they will come post-lap cholecystectomy to you. And if dissemination had to occur, it would have occurred by that time. So this is unfortunately the problem, because 90% of the cholecystectomies which are being done in India are done on the strength of an ultrasound. Nobody bothers to even do a CT scan and see if there is a thickening of the gallbladder at one place or a polyp-like thing at a place. Nobody bothers to actually see whether are they dealing with a carcinoma or not. That is very unfortunate with us. That Rashmi is with Fortis and with the Max, and she says that they are regularly using radiation for all patients greater than T1B, node positive or margin positive.
Ma'am, if you can answer, how is the tolerance of radiation along with capecitabine in these group of patients in your experience? Just on the basis of experience, that how is the tolerance of these patients with chemo as well as radiation together?
Basically, radiation therapy, because we have now the latest machine, the TrueBeam, which is using the micro MLCs. So we can shape the tumor size as more precise as we can do earlier. So we are giving radiation therapy 45 to 50 grain, 25 to 28 fractions, along with capecitabine. And now we have the recent techniques using as a DIBH or 4DCT, which because liver has a random movement of inspiration and during inspiration and expiration. So we are using either 4DCT or deep inspiratory breath hold technique to stabilize the liver, to focus the target, and we are giving the tumor bed along with margins. And if the nodes are positive, then associated nodes like anterior and posterior pancreatoduodenal, cystic nodes, the nodes along the gallbladder. But those nodes, these are the guidelines we are including, and our lower border does not exceed beyond L. So now, yesterday I have seen one of the patients completed 20 fractions of radiation along with capecitabine. Lady with only complaints of anorexia and mild nausea, which is subsided with just giving MSET and PAN 40. So earlier it was difficult, we have treated, but now with the newer techniques, I think it becomes more and more tolerable. And if the performance status of patient is good, then he or she can tolerate very nicely. So there is not so much issue at present at this time.
Okay. Okay. Ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. But we are not using it. We are not using it, and at TMC you are also not using it. So,
No.
so most
Only
of
for
the most of the
resection
centers.
positive
Yeah.
cases.
Yes, but it is a very labor intensive process and a very good, because daily we are doing a CBCT, DIBH, then matching at least 30 to 35 minutes treatment on machine, and regularly follow up twice weekly with a CBC, LFT, every weekly blood test also. And just wait and watch. But I don't think there is so much toxicity, and we are just controlling the dose to the liver as well as the duodenum. The stomach might be there because it might be distended, so we are using an empty stomach. There are so many protocols we are following, and till 20 fractions, the patient is all right. Until now, we have treated almost from last 7 years. I think 28, 30 patients we have treated till now.
Okay. Okay, Rashmi. Thank you.
Wanted to be a silent spectator. Really wanted to see you in action.
No, no, no. We want to see you. So, what's your thought on gallbladder?
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of gallbladder in Hyderabad?
I would not be able to tell you how many patients are treated in the hospital, but in the past 10 years, we could operate only 17 gallbladders. So it's a very small number.
Very small number. Yeah. My experience with
Whether it
RC6
is
went from,
primary surgery or otherwise.
yeah,
Very small number.
very small number, because gallbladder cancer is very rare in South.
Yes.
Very rare in South. So when I was in Trivandrum, first 10 years, I hardly saw any gallbladder cancer there. I saw more pancreas there.
Yeah, you know South very well. Yes. Pancreas is lots. Yes.
Pancreas is lots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, this patient had a good response to erlotinib. So we continued it for the maintenance therapy, and for how long?
Normally, the dictum in a metastatic disease is to continue till toxicity or till progression.
Okay, sir. And any criteria specific, like Demox tolerance versus Demox plus erlotinib? Like
See, the problem is with gemcitabine. With gemcitabine, there is no problem. You can continue with gemcitabine as long as you want. But oxaliplatin is known to cause peripheral neuropathy, and if you are using oxaliplatin, most of the time you will have to stop the treatment in between. Gemcitabine is very well tolerated. Not much of a problem with gemcitabine alone. So you can either go for GemCap, or you can go for capecitabine erlotinib, or you can go for single agent capecitabine. Capecitabine tolerance is excellent.
Sir, like in other in lung cancers or wherever we are giving these TKIs, erlotinib or geftinib, we see rashes, and we use this as a clinical marker of like drug acting on that. In
Yes.
your experience, you have seen the same in these patients
Very
where you have
severe,
given.
very severe, very severe. Not just
And
the
have you
rashes,
seen
but
that
then
these are the patients where it is working better?
uh, that it's very difficult for me to correlate right now. But
Okay.
this is so severe that you have to stop the TKIs in most of these cases. Start
Okay.
azithromycin, and most of these are folliculitis because of staphylococcal.
Yes.
So they start with a rash and then develop folliculitis. You have pus-forming blisters, and then you will have to stop the TKI. You have to start azithromycin for 5 days, clean it with betadine, apply soframycin, and then they will regress, and they'll keep on occurring. And some of them
Yes, sir.
occurs at so bad places that like people are not able to sit, people are not able to comb, because in head you get a lot painful blisters. So this is quite common with TKIs, quite common.
Yes, sir. Sir, can we ask questions related to other, like not just metastatic, like locally advanced and other things, or are you going to have a separate session on locally advanced gallbladder
We
cancers?
can have session, but 1 or 2 questions won't hurt, so you can ask.
Sir, your policy on patients gallbladder cancer presenting with obstructive jaundice, how do you go about these patients? Do you use neoadjuvant therapy in these patients?
Sort of my experience tells me that if a patient presents with an obstructive jaundice, he is doomed. Their survival is very poor. Maximum you will
Right.
be able to generate is something like 12 or maybe 15 months at the max.
Yes, sir.
Even with this surgery, even if you go do a surgery, even if you do a CBD resection uh, along with it, even then the disease recurrence is very fast, because I feel that obtaining a negative margin in these cases is very difficult,
Right,
because
sir.
you have a portal vein just behind, and your margins are not even millimeters.
Yes.
So it's quite possible that you may leave the disease behind, and that is why when it recurs even worse. So we as a policy select very carefully. If the obstruction is because of lymph node pressures, we probably will take up the case. If it is infiltration, I always say that gallbladder cancer which occurs in fundus and body have a better survival than those which occurs in neck of the gallbladder infiltrating CBD. Those
Very
are the
true, sir.
worst cases to have. So gallbladder carcinoma is not a uniform set of disease. The fundus has a very good prognosis. Even if it is
Yes.
infiltrating the stomach, it is infiltrating the colon, you can always take it out without a very little morbidity. So you can do multi-organ resections also. But when the
Yes.
disease is located in the neck of the gallbladder, it is infiltrating into the common bile duct, then getting a negative margin is very difficult. That's my experience. And
Okay.
I personally have stopped operating all such cases. So I'm very selective. If I see a lymph node compressing the CBD, I probably will go in and operate. If I see infiltration into the CBD, I'll just won't do it. I'll send them for palliative chemo.
Okay, sir. So second thing regarding presence of celiac group of lymph nodes and interaortocaval lymph nodes. So in your routine surgeries, you normally go to these areas and send the tissues present in station 16, and after getting frozen section, you proceed for surgery, or it's not a routine policy?
No, it is the first step of doing a radical cholecystectomy is to go to the aortocaval lymph nodes. If you find the lymph nodes, we normally don't send it for frozen section, but we clinically try to see whether these lymph nodes are, if you have a hard round lymph node and you feel that it will be probably involved, then you take it out and send it. But most of the time, if you don't find anything there, if you don't find a lymph node, enlarged lymph node and aortocaval nodes, then you proceed with cholecystectomy. And celiac axis node is a non-regional node. it is considered as metastatic. It's a non-regional node.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
But for any good gallbladder surgery, you have to go to aortocaval. This dictum is there for pancreas. This dictum is there for cholangiocarcinomas. For all hepatobiliary pancreatic tumors, you have to first go to the aortocaval nodes, ensure that there is no aortocaval node, and then only proceed with surgery.
Okay. Agreed, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Devang.
Sir, I have a question that if patient is presented with thickening in GB on ultrasound, we got them CT scan, it is suggestive of 4 millimeter thickness, universal thickness in gallbladder wall.
Yes.
Then what would be our approach? Should we go with resection of liver bed and send it as a specimen, or we should go with after removing gallbladder, send it for frozen and then remove the portion of liver bed?
It is just 4 millimeter thickening, no mass lesion?
Nothing, sir.
Nothing. If you are going with a 4 millimeter thickness, I think 4 millimeter is not very significant thickenings in gallbladder, because in chronic cholecystitis, you may get even more thicker gallbladders than this, especially xanthogranulomatous cholecystitis.
Yes, sir.
So these are the cases where you don't know you are dealing with the gallbladder cancer or not. Ideal would have been to have a MRI also in these cases. Sit with your radiologist, discuss the various possibilities, and if you think that the possibility of malignancy is there, then it is radical cholecystectomy, nothing less. Then it's not only the liver, then the lymph nodes also goes.
Okay, sir. So what about Lucknow approach, sir? Lucknow approach. Do we practice it, or it is just remove the gallbladder along with liver bed and do it as if you are doing radical cholecystectomy upfront in thickened gallbladder?
No, that is what I'm saying. That if you think that you are dealing with a malignancy, then you have to do the full radical cholecystectomy, not just the liver.
Yes, sir.
Then you have to do lymphadenectomy as well.
Yes, yes.
Then you have to clear the lymph node stations as well.
Sir, if I may say, one study by Dr. Jadhav et al. And by ACPJ only, they say that up to 6.5 millimeters, you think as a xanthogranulomatous cholecystitis. If it is more than 8.5 millimeter, then you think it as CA. They have defined the millimeter criteria, thickness criteria.
But there is no dictum. There is no dictum. You actually
no dictum, no dictum, sir. In their studies, they have found it.
Most of the people will do another second imaging and sit with their radiologist, see the lymph node station, see the status of other organs, nearby organs, and then decide that if they think that it is malignant, then they will go with the radical chole. Then nothing less than radical chole. Actually, doing a radical chole does not add much to morbidity. It's actually, if you are not doing it for a malignancy and there are no nodes, it is actually a very simple, straightforward procedure. All you are removing is fat. That's all. It doesn't cause morbidity.
Manoj sir, I have a question for you.
Yeah, no.
Regarding the new classification of T2A and T2B.
Yep.
Are you finding any difference in their survival? Because it is the peritoneal and non-peritoneal. Then there is a lot of controversies about T1B, whether to go for a hepatic resection or not.
Arnab, I think the TNM classification of gallbladder cancer is always challengeable. This time I have not written it. Every time I used to write an article on what are the shortcomings of this. See, the problem is most of the people who are sitting with the TNM classifications have no personal experience of managing gallbladder cancers because they don't see gallbladder cancers. That is one of the problem. And I think the peritoneal side or the liver side, the difference is actually, if you have a difference in outcome, it is because most of the people are afraid to excise liver liberally. I think that is the problem, because most of the people will be removing a very thin rim of liver and maybe leaving a positive margin there. On the peritoneal side, even if there is a other organ involvement, they will go more liberal and excise more. So I think rather than the biology, biologically there are two different entities. The fundus is one entity irrespective of liver or the peritoneal side, and the neck is another entity, because they behave differently. But other than that, liver side or peritoneal side, I don't see why it will cause any difference in survival. Because whenever we are talking of survival, Arnab, the treatment given is always a covariate.
Can you please comment on your experience of NGS in carcinoma gallbladder, sir? What is the tissue preferred? What is the most common mutations you identified, and what is the response rates you had? Can you please comment on that, sir?
Oh yes, we do it with the Vex block.
Yes.
NGS is always done with the Vex blocks, and 40% of them will have no mutations, because we are doing only 50 gene panel, and our intention is to find out whether these mutations can be targeted or not. We are not looking at pathologic mutations, or the mutations which are contributing to the pathogenesis. That also we have done, but that is not part of this particular project. So for research purposes, we do NGS separately. We go by pathway-based approach and look for mutations. We have submitted, I think, 60 mutations to Cliniver in last 3 years. And if you look at these 50 gene panel that we do, the commonest is the P53 mutation. That is we commonly see, and PI3KC mutation is also very common. EGFR is not that common as we see. Like if you go by the word literature, 30% are EGFR mutations, but we have not found it. For us, finding a EGFR mutation is very rare, very rare. Maybe 5 to 7% or 8%. That's all. And BRAF, VEGF mutations we don't find. HER2 positivity we don't find. So most of them will be having RAS mutations and P53 mutations.
Yes.
So those two mutations we always do, because if we are thinking in terms of EGFR targeting, we don't do it we don't use the cetuximab or panitumumab in patients who are P53 or RAS mutated. So that is why those even though they don't have direct effect on therapy, or there is no therapy directed to them, but we still do them because they help us in choosing a therapy. So these are the cases which respond very well to bevacizumab, even in absence of a VEGF mutation. Because what is happening here is, like, you always start with GEMOX in a non-jaundice patient. In presence of a jaundice, you have to get it stented, and you cannot wait for the jaundice level to go down 4 to 6 weeks before you start your chemotherapy. So you start with Capox. So GEMOX and Capox are the two common regimes which you start with. Capox can be continued for a longer period, till toxicity or till progression. But most of the time, the moment the bilirubin level falls, we switch them to GEMOX. Because GEMOX has a better response rate than Capox. But problem with GEMOX is that the moment you go about 8 or 9 cycles of GEMOX, you may have a response or you may have a stable disease. Patient starts having tingling and numbness, and then you have to stop exoliplatin. So ultimately, when you go back to capox or when you exhaust capox, you have to look for something else to give. So after first line, second line, there is no third line. Like in a metastatic breast, you have line after line. In a gallbladder, you don't have anything. So then your options are go back to 5-FU cisplatin or 5-FU leucovorin. If you can find a target, then it is better to add that target. What excision you want. If I am going in, I'll always excise the port site. And you won't believe how many port site recurrences we see every day. You won't know. We are seeing so many port site recurrences. Yeah. So this is something which is very common, that port site recurrences do occur. You will be surprised that most of the surgeons in periphery do not use bag for extraction. Do you know that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So when you know it,
they won't follow the oncological principles. Yes, sir.
And if you know that they are not using a bag for specimen extraction, and you will still won't excise the port site. So I think this.
I agree.
Yeah. You must excise.
I agree with you, sir. I totally agree with you. And number two is about whenever we get a metastasis in the port site only, just you do a PET before doing or you do a laparoscopy, you find a peritoneal mets in the port site. In that cases, there are some studies which has already been done, and also Dr. Mallika Tiwari told this morning only. We were discussing a CAGB that she puts this patient on NACT because this is a metastatic disease already. So NACT gives you time to see whether the disease is bad, or it actually tells you about the disease biology. If the disease remains static or doesn't progress in another 2 or 3 months, then she goes in and does a excision of the port site. Now the problem with the port site is how the people enter the port in an oblique way, sir. In that case, I want your experience about that. I want to hear from you, sir, because most of the people might not enter the port in a straight way. Then what about excision of that?
Excision will still have to be done. The defect may be bigger. So excision has to be done.
Excision has to be done.
Still excision has to be done.
I prefer doing excision, sir, because I don't know. Most of the people, I agree with you. Most of the people don't use endobag.
So if there are no more questions, I thank everybody for their participation, and